Doing from exponential potential to not being able to pay for the rental or even a bill from the dental. Now how's that for your mental? I've been through hard times too. The situation demand I bring the hard rhymes through. That's why I'm hard times too.
So I was shopping Airbnbs the other day, trying to find something nice on a lakeside, and found one where the preview image was a Zoomer being beaten to death with a length of pipe by somebody with a gunny sack over their head. I clicked on it, of course, and was taken to Wingard Cottage, the location of Final Girl, A Knock at the Door. Remember, before you book this trip, there's going to be a lot of killings on this vacation, and no refunds as usual.
Get back, hit that, bitch, I'm a rough that. Get no bag, hold the price of success. Do they suck? Yes, I think they better let it go. Shout of your roar, baby. Welcome to the murder show.
Welcome to episode 113 of Breakup Gaming Society, podcast that features board game deep dives, hip-hop deep cuts, lots of stories, and accidental wisdom. What makes these incongruous elements work? Me, your host, the Lord Chief Rocket, number one, and the sponsor of this episode, Doghouse Riley. Doghouse Riley is the T-Mill storefront of my man, Tim Sisme, who was our guest curator for last segment's track of the week. Tim also makes clever teas based on visual puns and, to my delight, opening lyrics from classic hip-hop songs. I left a link to his store in the show description, along with a link to a special shirt he made for Breakup Gaming Society featuring one of my favorite lines from a Guru verse. Rest in peace, Guru. I also congratulate Professor Felix Hopkins, winner of the Indie Game Bundle contest, including work from Grumpy Spider Games, The Seahorse and the Hummingbird, Longtail Games, and Ada Press. I reconnected with the prof a few weeks ago to interview him about a tarot deck he was designing, and he did me the courtesy of listening to an episode, following the entry instructions, and thereby winning. Be sharp and alert like Felix, and you might win the next one. Prof, I'll be in touch to arrange delivery of your new treasures. Now, what's worth playing in this episode? Games of the week. I dove face first into Final Girl, A Knock at the Door, only my second experience with this thrilling, slick, and cruel hit solo horror franchise. It threw me with some new tricks, and the Final Girl, Ava, hit back with some new tactics of her own. Right along for that story to the once peaceful lakeside vacation spot of Wingard Cottage. Last fall, I played a much gentler contest in a much safer location, a house in Taos where I tilted at Scrabble with the moms for the first time in years. In Final Girl, you fight the killer. In Scrabble, you fight your moms, but we were also teaming up against the thieves of our memory and our language. Thoughts and reflections on that. Lastly, another chunk of my talk with shelf-stable co-host Kenny Katayama, who had lots to say about what Fantasy Flight Games' golden age looked like from his side of the table. That part of our discussion covered Battlestar Galactica, Letters from Whitechapel, Fury of Dracula, and more. Track of the week. More cross-Atlantic, cross-genre sample and production tracing as evidenced in classic hip-hop songs. In this case, a look at Dance For Me off Queen Latifah's very first album in 1989, and the Ultimatum remix that still thrills me more than 35 years after first hearing it. After Games of the Week, which is now.
Bitch, I kicked it, yup, I kicked it, come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
A scant 4, maybe 5 turns into my first game of Final Girl, A Knock at the Door. Ava, our hero, is cornered in the garage of Wingard Cottage as Trish, Zeke, and Baghead converge on her. The first blow halves her health and makes her forget what kind of thing she was trying to fashion from the junk in there. It hardly matters now. It's a killer's moon up there tonight. What could have stopped this tide? Before they turned their exclusive attention to Ava, the 3 intruders cleared out the rest of the cottage like a 6-legged thresher. They drew the coordinated attack dark power, which put them on the march every turn. They drew the amphetamines dark power, and the outsider, a special victim meeple summoned by the first action card, all but sealed it. It felt like what might have happened if the Manson family had studied 100 hours of Special Forces breach and clear videos on YouTube before going over to Tate and Polanski's house. It's an utter rout, so sudden, so rude, so total that I can only laugh in admiration. After all, this is what I came here for. This is my second trip through the rooms of a Final Girl location. The first was Final Girl, Madness in the Dark, based on the Silent Hill console franchise. I tilted with that beast something like 15 times before getting my first victory against Wolf Asylum's Ratchet Lady and her minions. I raged against it for weeks, What kept me in it? I was hypnotized by its kaleidoscope of candy components, its evocative scene-making, the coruscating variety of its cruelty, the roller coaster dosages of choice and chance, the deadpan jokes it writes in human fluids. I gave my buddy Fritz a few hits of the action at Wolf Asylum one night last summer, and he had his own core box and first movie, Killer from Tomorrow, within weeks. The worst loss at Final Girl, he texted me recently, is infinitely more interesting than a month of any streaming service. His enthusiasm arced back to me and got me shopping a new challenge from Van Ryder Games' ever-expanding lineup of exquisite torture devices. I finally opted for a knock at the door because I liked the twist, fending off 3 killers at once, with the option to rig up grisly homemade weapons with stuff you find around the house. I finally remember what Ava was thinking about in that first game before her vision flipped to permanent static. She was thinking about making an obliterator, a two-hander that Ava can build if she collects wood, rope, discarded tools, and nails. But to do that, you need time and composure and the ability to recalculate opportunities and threats faster than the 3 intruders can julienne all your pals like fresh onions. Finding a substantial weapon while you hustle a victim or two out of one of the board's exit spots is usually a solid opening sequence, but the appearances of the outsider derails me. Ava burns a hellacious pile of action cards getting to the bedroom where the outsider was moping. It's not until I move her there that I realize the room has no western or southern exits, so Ava has to drag them back out along the same route. Where were the clean extraction drills I seemed to run so well in Wolf Asylum? The zones outside the cottage soak up action cards like thirsty desert soil. One of the intruders catches up with Ava and the outsider just as they clear the house, simplifying the problem by hacking the outsider to bits in front of her. By this time, the board is on full boil and the first game is lost. I picture a party banner loosening at one end in a room full of the slain. You can just make out the text before it folds over on itself. Welcome back, fucker. My first day of play grinds to a halt because something doesn't make sense about the pace at which the intruders tore through that map. It feels unfair even by Final Girl's callous standards. I hunt down every thread I can find about the coordinated attack card. None of the discussions plainly address this problem I'm seeing with the word effect as it appears in the scenario-specific rules and on the tarot card itself. Several times that day I try to become a more practical player. The instinctual ruling is probably right, I tell myself. The sensible thing is to just run with it. But why is the operational language not lining up? During the afternoon, I think myself into a shadow world. I describe the problem on Reddit, on Board Game Geek, to my friend Dave over at Dude Take Your Turn. I got so desperate for answers in between waiting for forum responses that I even asked Sam Altman's world-burning machine. It gives me a long explanation of why my bent-up conclusion about the card language is correct and why I can play the game incorrectly if I really feel like it. Some players, it notes, also interpret this card in a more forgiving way. I keel sideways out of my chair when I realize it is using my own question threads from that day to justify the ruling I wanted. Sweet Mother of God, please watch over the souls of the lonely children in the clutches of this trillion-dollar imbecile. At this point of the day-long wrestling match, my inability to figure out the game appears to me in a continuum with both everything I've failed at ever and everything that's objectively fractured in the world. This is your reminder to put a permanent asterisk over everything your host says about board games. He's not entirely well. My question was valid in the semantic sense, but it had nothing to do with the law as applied. The toughest part of the map, as always, was in my head. Like Dave told me via email, don't make it tougher than it already is. LOL. I was too young to remember how the conversation started, but I remember my dad, who could always build mental traps out of any material he found, telling me in the cab of the truck one day on the way to town, Warrens do it the hard way. I heard it hopefully, like it meant we were a tough breed, but his jokes were warnings for the decades to come. Fortunately, the Warren family inheritance also comes with a tendency to fixation and addiction, which begets repetition, which begets improvement. Ava charges back into Wingard Cottage at least 6 more times over the next few days. She weathers several ugly misfires that aren't worth playing past the 4th turn, but the facts of the new terrain and its adversaries start to blend with known best practices. The contests get a lot less lopsided. I start to internalize the new rules, settle down, and bite back. On the 4th or 5th game, Ava gets the whole arts and crafts thing well enough to make a spiked bat. That starts off with a super turn tactic that I picked up online when I was learning Madness in the Dark. Back to personal psychology here. I'm an overly timid player who likes to explore and experiment with a certain set of blinders on. You know the axiom, scared money don't make none? I'm a scarcity thinker who doesn't see creative strategies in the card and action economy, especially when the game's interlocking horror track, bloodlust track, and terror deck start beating me up. Under these conditions, giving up something highly valuable to get something that's even more valuable just doesn't appear in my brain's default pull-down menu. This urge is well documented in psychological studies of the poor. When I was first learning the final girl action steps, in my mind, a small hand of good cards had to work because each one felt precious to the little success story I'd written in my head. And when that story didn't happen, the part of my brain that scans for creative tactical opportunities simply checked the fuck out. The super turn concept was extremely counterintuitive to me. The person who posted about this tactic suggested that instead of bleeding out your first few small hands with must-make horror rolls, you just focus on reducing the horror track so by the time you get a bonus third die, you have a massive hand that you can execute almost at will, which works even better if you lead off the super turn by forcing a double success with an improvise action. You just have to tell your brain it's okay to sweat out a few turns where you get little done, which the game's constant pressure tricks players like me into not thinking about. I was too proud to use this tactic at first because it felt like I was shortcutting to success. Instead of making Delphic quips, Pops could have served me better by telling me it's okay to raise your hand for help when you're good and stuck. So on that fourth or fifth game, with an extra die and a string of small actions in hand, Ava strolls into the shed, calmly assembles a spiked bat, walks out of the shed, and demolishes her first intruder without breaking a sweat. It is late in the game and she's already taken damage, so I use another trick I learned during pitched battles with the Ratchet Lady in Wolf Asylum. Ava starts redlining. If your horror track is well under control, you get 3 dice for skill checks. Get down to 1 health, and you add a 4th adrenaline die, which makes you a dangerous wounded target. This way, you can goad your antagonist by lingering in the same room as them, looking beaten and pulpy, then pop a retaliate card on them, alternated with any attack cards you have at hand. The game breaks wide open. Ava wallops Trish and Zeke into a vapor with that bat. A terror card effect sends Baghead right to Ava's space the very next turn. Oh, Baghead, I say with a note of pity. You picked the right one. The weight of all those setup plays makes the dice feel like incipient thunder in my hand. All I have to do is throw the bolt from the high ground. I roll a 1-1-1-4 on my retaliate roll. I don't even have the strength to get mad. I stare at the dice for 15 seconds, then reset the game. The next game, I win my first contest in a blowout. I'm handed a magical opening sequence in the first few cards, a shotgun, components to build snare traps, and the home security event. Only a fool could squander a setup that juicy. Between the snares, shotgun harassment, and the home security system, the intruders can't get into the house. 11 victims get to eat fiddle-faddle inside and laugh while Ava walks the home invaders down and sorts them out. Et voila. I get to experience one of the capital B best moments in board gaming, right up there with the Castillo reveal in El Grande and the initial plane placement step of a Thunderbolt Apache leader mission. I get to open the little envelope from the box. A little envelope that you can only open when your character survives a map for the first time. Inside, there's Ava's spiked bat and porcupine, a baseball bat garbage can lid combo bristling with 10-penny nails. And it's just a regular item that can be found with a search. You don't even have to craft anything on the fly. Well, that's a son of a bitch right there, and perfect for the 2026 grad in your life. I'm not saying Ava has mastered this scenario, but she seems well over her freshman jitters. There is a 100% likelihood I set this up again first thing in the morning. The 3-killer problem is vexing and chewy. The weapon forging system is starting to show its charms. A big thing this game has going for it is that even when the tactical advantage of something isn't obvious, you're regaled with gobs of theme until the insight catches up. The event and item variety are still novel enough to bring regular surprises and shocks. I couldn't believe starting my first game with Booby Trap, the event card that panics all the victims. And by the way, the outside of the house is booby-trapped and you're starting the game with a potential die-off even before you've run one turn. The next game, the neighbor special victim appeared, chatting everybody up in the living room with those boat keys in his pocket and the potential rush of safely seeing off a jackpot of victims from the lakefront. Because exploration and situational flavor gradients are as important to me as solving the game, I know I can spend the next few weeks dashing to every corner and implication of this new batch of items, events, and tactics. And after that, my first opportunity to mix and match scenarios and killers. Now that I'm in the 2-movie club, I can start remixing. What happens when I drop the Ratchet Lady from Madness in the Dark into Wingard Cottage? There are many more firsts waiting for me in this series this year. How do my 2 titles stand up against the rest of the Final Girl collection in terms of balance, challenge, and system design? It's unlikely that I'll find out anytime soon. The 2 boxes I have will keep me titillated for months. Picture a line graph in the shape of a long sloped mountain with the apex representing getting it. The long downslope is as delicious and leisurely as the climb is aggravating and painful. From the high view, everything that can be said about Knock at the Door can be said about Madness in the Dark. It's fussy, obstreperous, clever, and rousing. Each of these little boxes is a universe that I'd love to wind up again and again as they sputter, confound, and explode, each time in a subtly different pattern, like a lava lamp filled with chases and stabbings. All these qualities make the Final Girl series the biggest genre breaker I've experienced in years. Horror settings aren't a huge draw for me in and of themselves, plus I usually shun expansions or anything that has the whiff of subscription lock-in. But I heard it was good. I wanted something different in the diet, and on that day, I was at a proper game shop I knew I wasn't going to be near again for several months, so I grabbed it. Now it's grabbed me, in a death grip of fun. What's going to happen next? What new tactical bank shots can I come up with in situations I would have considered beyond hope 4 games ago? I'm going to find out again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Next, some thoughts on both the competitive and wider cooperative benefits of Scrabble and not being an elitist board game jerk around your mom who is a nice lady who just wants to play Scrabble. I ate some fine food with the Rants in Taos last September, tagged along with them for a day trip to Ojo Caliente, their favorite self-care amusement park. When you're a nice person, such as the mom's is, you generate all kinds of cool opportunities in the Denver nice old person barter economy. She spent a whole day teaching somebody how to can food at home. They kicked her back a free stay in a beautiful house in Taos. The house had a name, like estates do. It was so pretty it hurt, and so was the street where it sat, dozing in inauspicious good taste under its dome of sweet air and decades of fastidious zoning. There was a block's worth of desert meadow across the lane. Cars passed rarely and at reverent speeds when they did. Inside, we stole away to sleep when we liked, sometimes gathering to read or scroll at the central table. No bigger decisions here than the timing of coffee, the composition of snack plates, the unforced overlap of the domestic rhythms of 2 octogenarians and their middle-aged son. The last evening included a game of Scrabble, which the mom's always asks for when I see her and which I usually manage to dodge because I'm a finicky twat. But by then, the neighborhood and the company loosened me up. I'd have eaten kibble out of a stranger's unwashed hand. She cleared the table while my stepdad scrolled on his iPad and listened to 20th century composers. It was a magnetic travel set, its longest journey taken through 2 generations of her family. I will likely end up with it someday. Every tile was still there. The action and the company were good. I recognized in her my approach to the game. Competitive, but leavened with the pure delight of words. Both of us were prone to unwise plays that opened up parts of the board to the opponent because the word we found was too pretty not to line up. That kind of thing would never fly with her brother, who has one of those Scrabble dictionaries that lets you smash your opponent to their knees with 2- and 3-letter words that all sound like rocks. He always played this way. During my visits to Chicago as a boy, he'd play his 3M bookshelf games with me when he was in med school, no quarter given. The object of the game, he would always say with a purr of a deadpan MC, is to win. The winner, that's me. Then he'd describe the game and beat me at it. Those 3M games, as well as my grandmother's 1980s Genius edition of Trivial Pursuit, are in my care now. It's not written down in any of the succession docs that sit in a plastic binder back in Starkville, but I assume I'll be the keeper of Mom's travel Scrabble set someday, providing I do her the courtesy of staying on the right side of the dirt longer than she does. Neither of us played to lose, but there was a broader concord in forming this match, to prod sparks from the hidden vaults of language and admire them together. The beauty of Scrabble, or any good trivia or word game, reminds me that we're all water bugs skating on the black pools of the self. What's down there? Looking for a mid-game play, I found the word griot was down there. I couldn't remember the definition or how I came by it, this emissary from the sleeping water of the mind. I mostly managed to keep pace with her, but I got the bad end of 2 of the game's 3 challenges. Those lost turns were the game's winning margin. A few summers ago, I woke up with a sore back and hamstrings and a plangent tentacled hangover because I'd spent the late evening and early morning drunk as a lord, standing bent over my kitchen counter, yelling into my laptop and trading vintage Trivial Pursuit questions with an equally drunken high school friend. I got a question about which 2 actors refused their Oscars in the 1970s. He gave me an astonishingly long time to get it. He gloats when he wins. Once he did it so bad that I hung up on him. But he was rooting for me on this one. I somehow knew that one had to be Marlon Brando because he was cagey and artistic. I strained until the other one arrived. It was George C. Scott, I said after several minutes of plumbing. I don't know. It seemed beyond reasoning, beyond memory. Magical alcoholic treasure hunt. The brain is a protean dungeon map with endless replayability. He huzza'd as if the answer were his own. After the moms packed the set back into the drawstring bag, her imploring post-game question ID'd the real opponent at our table, the doldrums of forgetting. I need to ask you a question, she said. I braced myself for unwanted family revelation. Did you let me win? Did I do that on my own? I was happy to tell her I'd played at my peak and lost straight up. Back to a theme I touched on while learning Final Girl, A Knock at the Door. I'm a neurotic guy, and 5 years in the country living solo has brought me all the best and worst of my lifelong drive for emotional autonomy and time uncrimped by the desires or impressions other people have of the world, which are torture when not taken in careful bites. At the best, this mindset buys me the time I need to be possessed totally by something that's worthy, thereby erasing time. At the worst, I fail to recognize the midpoints where a version of this joy can be found with others, and judge others ungenerously for their clumsiness in recognizing the melodies of my private hymnals. I wanted to report the final score in this segment of the Scrabble game, so I called her the other day and asked her to text me the outcome, which I know she wrote down. Now that, she keeps forgetting. Next, another celebration of memory. A second excerpt from my excellent talk with Shelf Stable's Kenny Katayama about Fantasy Flight Games' Golden Age. In the last episode, we focused heavily on his experiences with FFG's living card games. In this stretch, I wanted to know which board games from that publisher's era stuck in his mind. He did not disappoint. That part of the talk went like this. In terms of Fantasy Flight board and card titles, what else from my misty old era sort of made an impression on Kenny and your group's world?
Battlestar Galactica. That's a big one.
Yep.
I think Battlestar Galactica continues to be one of the games that is most thematically coherent to me. Like, it really, really evokes its setting as well as, like, the things that happen in that show. It's still enjoyable if you haven't watched the show, but I'm really impressed with what it's able to do. My one beef with it is it's just like a 4-hour game. I really wish, and I don't have a problem playing long games. I just wish it was shorter because it does start to drag at the end. But that could also be our game group, and maybe, there'll be people saying, "Oh, I play Battlestar in 2 hours, and I play with my 7-year-old daughter." Like, I don't know. Yeah, it is an amazing game, though. I very much enjoy it when I do play it.
So Battlestar Galactica was brought to the table by our friends, the dude of the group, Jay. He could learn and teach almost anything within a day of just looking at it. It's a talent I never acquired, but they had us over for one of our game nights and they brought out Battlestar Galactica. And for some reason or another, I think it was because I never quite understood what the game was asking me to do, because at that point, the trader mechanic or the semi-co-op thing, it wasn't really as big of an institution. So when we sat down in front of it, I was kind of impatient and befuddled. Like, what? I have to bluff? I don't want to bluff. I want it to be all about positions and rolling and what the event card says. All of a sudden, you're adding this social dimension to it. I don't want it.
There is a lot to kind of internalize when you're playing it. The fact that you have to navigate the mechanisms while also thinking about the social deduction, it's almost like you're playing 2 games at the same time.
Yeah, although I noticed Kenny, people are still talking about this, and it seems to be something that is, if I may coin a phrase, shelf stable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no inherent quality of the game. Sometimes a beautiful game will just flop because, somebody's having a fight, you're in a bad mood, you're just a little more tired, and it just bounces off you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there were, we played the hell out of Resistance and Coup and loved them. But the night they tried to show us Battlestar, we had enough other stuff going on where I didn't ever feel like asking for it again.
Yep.
You had quite a few turns around the track with Fantasy Flight LCGs, a lot more than I did, and Battlestar Galactica, which got introduced, I don't know, at the 20 or early 20 teens.
Yeah.
Do you have any other Fantasy Flight Golden Era stuff in rotation at the time with your folks?
Fantasy Flight was for a while printing a lot of games that are not necessarily, I guess, in line with their catalog. I think I played the Fantasy Flight printing of Letters from Whitechapel when I played that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, one of the big hidden movement games. I still think that very much exemplifies the hidden movement genre. There's definitely other games that have come out since that are like more interesting or more exciting, but I don't know, like Letters from Whitechapel feels very pure to that aspect.
Our first experience ever with either hidden movement or the all against one model was, again, here's Fantasy Flight. We bought second edition of Fury of Dracula.
Yeah, Fury Dracula, that's the other one. I didn't know that was Fantasy Flight. That's cool.
It was eventually. So, and I didn't realize it until I started reading more reviews. But if some of these things seem a little out of place with what you'd expect their catalog to be, it's because they bought and revived a lot of either languishing games from small publishers or old games that had gone out of circ, and they would spruce up the rules, then lavish it with Fantasy Flight production and re-release it. They did that with Fury of Dracula. Biz War was a game from the 1970s that they reskinned, and
they did Cosmic Encounter too. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm. So, but boy, Fury of Dracula, I was always Dracula because the play is asymmetrical enough, or if you're playing Dracula, you have a lot more abilities and cards and things to manage. And I kind of learned it well enough to where I would be in the vampire seat. And they've since released a third edition, which I guess is simpler in some ways. But I have to tell you, man, those were thrilling nights. Well, I think we painted the minis for that one even.
You're always the Dracula. I was always the Fury.
I always thought the Fury was kind of a static character. It's like, you're mad again.
I'm looking at the list of games they printed. I'm trying to see. I mean, X-Wing. I never got super into X-Wing, but I was always friends with a bunch of people who got super into X-Wing. So I played a lot of X-Wing. And talk about Star Wars games. I think X-Wing is the game that does the most to actually evoke Star Wars. And maybe it's because it's hyper-focused on a specific aspect of Star Wars. But it's like the game where you really feel like you want to make the sound effects. You want to go while you're like moving your ships around.
I remember when it took off, and I remember saying, I'm not going to commit to this. But I remember also seeing as the years after its release went by that people were eating it up.
Yeah, it was huge, at least here. For good reason. I think it was a very well-designed game that, didn't lose itself in its theme, but managed to evoke it with a pretty concise rule set.
And because it's Star Wars, and I didn't want to commit to a minis game, there's no chance I was going to dive in on that. But I remember a lot of exasperated sighs when that one went away too, because people loved it. It seemed like sometimes, I guess, not even popularity or a fan base is enough. One of the and I wrote about this before earlier in the retrospective, but they bought and sexied up a 5-on-5 skirmish game called Tannhauser.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you were telling me about this.
Yeah, I played the piss out of it. And I still keep it. Not because I'll ever have anyone to play it with. Well, one of the problems it solved is that all the minis come painted. They don't look great, but they're painted. These games where people just put so much into it, but you realize that there's only a few that stick. And it turns out if you can't play it decade after decade, it just withers away.
Yeah, I never never had even heard of it until you mentioned it last time we were chatting. So it's definitely one I want to like check out at some point. One that kind of had a pulpy feel, but more in the fantasy setting was Runebound. I don't know if you ever got around to playing this one.
I know it by reputation. Was that Fantasy Flight?
Yeah, that was, I think it's in Terranoth, which is a Fantasy Flight setting. But Runebound, I was fortunate enough to be part of like the playtesting for the 3rd edition.
Really?
And I didn't do a lot of playtesting. I don't do any more playtesting now. It is always kind of like a little stressful. It goes from being something that you're playing for fun to something where you have to like write a report afterwards. You know, I think that put a little bit of a dampener on it. I did quite enjoy it though. It was a very classic, like go around the world on a big adventure, upgrade your character as you go and explore and find new things. And then at the end, you fight a big boss.
I really like adventure games like that. Again, that's why I bought Star Wars Outer Rim.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's soloable. There's a modern day Atoma with it, et cetera, et cetera. And I even have the Unfinished Business expansion, which I've never taken out once because I'm a victim of my own slow play because I really kind of have to pick my shots. Am I going to fall in love? I don't know. And if I don't, it's going to sit in the stack because I'm going to have Death Angel or Thunderbolt Apache Leader or Pavlov's House back out. You know, I got Wingspan a couple of years ago just to see what the kids are up to and to make sure that I consciously deviate from my normal 12-year-old's diet because left my own, I'm just going to eat tendies and I'm not going to wash. Thank you once again to Kenny Katayama of Shelf Stable for making the time to talk Fantasy Flight faves with me. Next, it's Track of the Week.
Bitch, I kicked it, yup, I kicked it. Come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
Queen Latifah's release of All Hail the Queen in 1989 was catnip to critics and the beginning of a very good run for Dana Elaine Owens that arced from albums to the screen. The tracks I return to most are both remixes of tracks on that album and are both touch points for how hip-hop and electronic acts from the US and the UK breathed one another in. The first is the crazy extended 45 King remix of the album's most well-known song, Ladies First. Obvious UK tie-in there. UK guest rapper Moni Love showed up and blew the doors off the guest house.
I wish for you to bring me to the rhythm of which is now systematically given. Desperately stressing, I'm the daughter of a sister who's the mother of a brother who's the brother of another. Plus one more. All four have a job to do. We doing it respect due to a mother who's the root of it. And next up is me, the MONIELOVE, and I'm first because I'm a LAZIE.
Now, DJ Mark, the 45 King, rest in peace, is the production name I most associate with this album, but Prince Paul, Daddy-O, KRS-One, and Louis Vega also contributed to this breakout. That is some production power. My second never skip off this album is the Ultimatum remix of Dance For Me, which also has some subtler UK DNA in it. It also has more juice, mood, and adrenaline than the LP version. Ultimatum was a specialist remix outfit composed of stereo MCs. Yes, fellow Americans, the outfit that had a big hit over here with Connected in 1992. And DJ Cesar, who is listed as the Ultimatum remix point man and sometimes as a member of stereo MCs. He had his beats and scratches in all kinds of projects and groups, everything from the KLF to Psychic TV. It's only fitting where the US touches the UK, touches hip-hop, touches dance music, you get a rich font of sample sources. According to WhoSampled.com, here you're getting pieces of James Brown and a Sly and the Family Stone medley track smoothly Frankensteined into a 1986 track from The, and bits of drums from Post-Punk Legends magazine. You can't deny how they put it all together over Latifah's bright exhortations to get on the dance floor.
So take the record to the DJ booth and let's start this. Let the beat get dumb, cause I'ma shake it all night and then some. People dancing, I can spot them. When I take control, you know I got them. Stop the music, that's out of the question. The flavor unit takes no suggestions. If you're not on the dance tip, here's your chance to be. I order you to dance for me.
some of my favorite comminglings of hip-hop and electronic sensibility right there, especially in the urgency of the break. What fun. I'm just going to play some more of it while you add this to your playlist. What you're searching for is Dance For Me, the Ultimatum remix by Queen Latifah. I'll wait and play some more while you go find it.
Dance for me. Dance for me.
Did you find it? Did you add it? Are you done? Because this segment is, and so is the episode. Episode 114 hits on April 15th. Look for a new indie TTRPG recommendation from my latest chat with Walt, who's our resident expert in these things. A retrospective of Chaos in the Old World, one of the giants of Fantasy Flight's Golden Age catalog, and how my magician friend, Professor Felix, is slightly reimagining the tarot deck for the stage. Thank you once again to Tim of Doghouse Riley for sponsoring this week's account of hard-won wisdom on and off the game table. Shop his catalog and see the shirt he made for Breakup Gaming Society with links in the show description. Until then, I remain your host and memory guardian, the Lord Chief Raka #1. May you fight long and well.